Chapter 1: The Dark Forest Calls. What if I told you that every nightmare you've ever had about being lost in a dark forest stems from one ancient story? A story so powerful, it's been whispered around fires for over 1,000 years, yet most people have never heard the true version. Tonight, we're going deep into the shadows of Slavic mythology to uncover the real Baba Yaga. And trust me, she's nothing like the cartoon witch you might remember. She's something far more terrifying and far more important. But before we begin, I need you to do something. Look around your room right now. Notice how safe and familiar everything feels. The walls, the light, the comfort of civilization. Hold on to that feeling, because we're about to leave it all behind. You see, there's a place that exists in the space between our world and whatever comes after. It's not marked on any map, and you can't find it with GPS. But if you're desperate enough, brave enough, or foolish enough, you might stumble into it. Picture this. You've been walking for days. Maybe you're running from something. Maybe you're searching for something you've lost. The paved roads disappeared hours ago. Then the dirt paths. Now there's nothing but endless trees, pressing in from all sides like living walls. The silence here isn't normal. It's the kind of quiet that makes your ears ring, broken only by the crack of twigs under your feet. But sometimes, and this is where it gets strange, sometimes you hear something else. A whisper on the wind that sounds almost like someone calling your name. You stop, listen, nothing. You keep walking, but now your skin is crawling. The trees seem closer than before. Their branches reach down like gnarled fingers, and their roots snake across the ground like they're trying to trip you. This isn't just any forest. This is the forest. The one from every fairy tale that ever made a child afraid to look out their bedroom window. And here's what most people don't realize. Those old stories weren't just entertainment. They were warnings, maps of dangerous territory, survival guides for navigating forces that could destroy you or transform you completely. The deeper you go, the more wrong everything feels. Mushrooms glow with their own light. Animals watch you with two intelligent eyes. And slowly, you begin to understand that you're not just lost in space, you're lost in time itself. This forest exists outside our normal reality. But why are you here? What could possibly drive someone to seek out such a place? That's the question that haunted our ancestors. And the answer they discovered is both beautiful and terrifying. Some gifts can only be found in the darkest places. Some wisdom can only be earned through facing your deepest fears. Now, imagine you've been walking for so long that your feet are bleeding, your water is gone, and you're starting to wonder if you'll ever see home again. Just when you think you might collapse from exhaustion, you see it. Smoke rising through the trees. Your heart leaps. Civilization, help, safety. But as you push through the final wall of branches into a clearing, your relief turns to ice-cold terror. Because what you find there shouldn't exist, can't exist. Yet there it stands, defying every law of physics and reason. Before we go any further, let me ask you something that might change how you see this entire story. What if Baba Yaga isn't the monster? What if she's actually the hero, and we've had it backwards this whole time? Think about it. Every culture has stories about wise women who live apart from society, healers and seers who know dangerous truths, women who refuse to be controlled, who hold power that threatens the established order. And what happens to those women throughout history? They get called witches. But here's what's controversial about the Baba Yaga stories. They might be the last surviving memory of a time when women held real spiritual authority, when the most important religious figures weren't male priests in golden temples, but wise women in forest huts who could speak directly with the forces of life and death? What if everything you've been told about good and evil, about heroes and villains, about who gets to hold power and who doesn't, what if it's all been carefully constructed to make you forget something crucial about the way the world really works? Before we meet her face to face, I want you to consider this. Every person who seeks out Baba Yaga is looking for something they can't find in the normal world. Something their family, their friends, their community, their entire civilization has failed to provide. And they're willing to risk everything, including their lives, to find it. The question is, what could be so valuable that it's worth facing a creature who might eat you alive just for knocking on her door? If you're ready to find out, then take a deep breath. Check that your doors are locked, maybe grab a warm drink, and prepare yourself for a story that will change how you think about power, wisdom, and what it really means to be alive. Because we're about to meet the most misunderstood figure in all of mythology, someone who might just be the most important teacher you've never had. If you think this journey sounds intriguing, hit that subscribe button now, because tonight we're going all the way to the end. And trust me, you don't want to face what's coming next without some company. Ready? Then follow me into the darkness. The witch is waiting. Chapter 2. The Girl Who Dared. Every great story about Baba Yaga begins with someone who has nothing left to lose. Tonight, that someone is a girl named Vasilisa, and her story will make you question everything you think you know about strength, family, and survival. But first, let me share something that might disturb you. This isn't just a fairy tale. Archaeologists and folklorists have found evidence that stories like Vasilisa's were based on real initiation rituals, real tests that young people had to pass to be considered adults in their communities. So as you listen to what happens to this girl, remember, somewhere in our past, someone actually lived through something very much like this. Vasilisa's nightmare begins in the most ordinary way possible, with death. She's barely 10 years old when her mother falls ill with a wasting sickness that turns her skin grey and her eyes hollow. But as the fever burns through her body, Vasilisa's mother does something that will save her daughter's life, though neither of them knows it yet. "Come here, my little bird," she whispers, pulling a small wooden doll from beneath her pillow. It's crudely carved but beautiful in its simplicity, with bright painted eyes and a tiny embroidered dress. "This doll has been in our family for 7 generations, her mother says, pressing it into Vasilisa's trembling hands. "She carries the wisdom of every woman who came before you. Feed her when you eat. Tell her your troubles when you're afraid. And no matter what happens to me, remember this: you are never truly alone." The doll's wooden eyes seem to sparkle in the candlelight, and for just a moment, Vasilisa could swear she feels it pulse like a heartbeat in her palm. 3 days later, her mother is dead. Now here's where the story takes a turn that might make you angry, because it's going to feel uncomfortably familiar. Vasilisa's father, overwhelmed by grief and the prospect of raising a daughter alone, makes what he thinks is a practical decision. He remarries within a year to a widow with 2 daughters of her own. And from the moment the new step-family moves in, Vasilisa's real education in survival begins. The stepmother is everything you'd expect: cold, calculating, and absolutely consumed with envy. But here's what makes her truly dangerous. She's smart. She doesn't just hate Vasilisa for her beauty and gentle nature. She sees her as a threat to her own daughter's futures. In a world where a woman's worth is measured by her marriage prospects, Vasilisa's natural grace and kindness make her a formidable competitor. So the stepmother decides to destroy her the only way she can, by grinding her down until nothing beautiful remains. The stepsisters, Drusilla and Anastasia, become willing accomplices. They force Vasilisa to scrub floors until her knees bleed, carry water until her back aches, and tend fires until her hands are permanently stained with soot. They steal her food, tear her clothes, and mock her for missing her dead mother. But here's what they don't understand, and this is crucial to everything that comes next. Suffering isn't always weakness. Sometimes it's preparation. Every night, after the household is asleep, Vasilisa feeds her doll a crust of bread and tells her about the day's humiliations. And every night, something magical happens. The doll's eyes glow softly in the darkness, and tiny hands begin to work. While Vasilisa sleeps, the doll sorts grain, mends torn fabric, and completes impossible tasks. She becomes more than a toy. She's Vasilisa's connection to her mother's wisdom, her ancestors' strength, and most importantly, her own intuition. This is where our story gets controversial, because it challenges something we rarely want to admit. Sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones who hurt us most. For 3 years, this continues. 3 years of abuse, manipulation, and psychological warfare. And with each passing day, the stepmother's hatred grows more desperate. Because despite everything they've done to break her, Vasilisa only becomes more beautiful, more graceful, more impossible to ignore. Finally, the stepmother realizes that conventional cruelty won't be enough. She needs something more permanent, more final. So she moves the family to a small cottage on the very edge of the deepest forest in all of Russia. A forest that everyone knows is cursed. A forest where no sane person goes after dark. The cottage is isolated, surrounded by twisted trees and perpetual shadows. The neighbors are few and far between, and they all share the same advice. Stay inside after sunset, don't follow strange sounds, and whatever you do, never venture too deep into the woods. Because that's where she lives, the witch, the bone collector, the one whose very name makes grown men cross themselves and women clutch their children closer, Baba Yaga. For weeks, the family settles into their new routine, but the stepmother is patient now. She's planned this carefully, and she knows exactly what she's going to do. It happens on a cold autumn evening when the wind is howling through the trees like something alive and angry. The stepmother gathers her daughters around the fireplace and begins putting out every candle, every oil lamp, every source of light in the house. One by one, the flames die until the cottage is plunged into absolute darkness. "Oh no," the stepmother says, and her voice is honey-sweet with false concern. "We have no light, no fire. How will we cook dinner? How will we keep warm? One of you girls must go to our neighbor and ask for some flame." The stepsisters immediately protest. "Not me," cries Drusilla. "I'm too frightened." "I couldn't possibly," wails Anastasia. "It's so dark and dangerous." And then, as if the idea has just occurred to her, the stepmother turns to Vasilisa with a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. "Well then, it must be you, dear stepdaughter. After all, you're the youngest and strongest. Surely you're not afraid of a little walk in the woods." Vasilisa looks toward the window, where the darkness between the trees seems to move and breathe like a living thing. She knows exactly what this is. She knows her stepmother is sending her to die. But here's what makes Vasilisa different from every other victim in every other story. She doesn't beg. She doesn't cry. She doesn't try to argue or negotiate or find an excuse. Instead, she takes the doll from her pocket, feels its familiar warmth against her palm, and says the words that will change her life forever. "Yes, stepmother, I'll go." And as she walks toward the door, something inside her that has been sleeping for years finally begins to wake up. Because sometimes the only way out of hell is straight through it. Sometimes the monster in the forest is exactly what you need to become who you're supposed to be. The door opens with a creak that sounds like a scream, and Vasilisa steps into the darkness. Behind her, she hears her stepmother whisper, "Goodbye, dear." But Vasilisa is already gone, walking toward a destiny that will make her stepfamily's cruelty seem like a gentle lullaby. Because she's about to meet something far more dangerous than any human evil. She's about to meet herself. Chapter 3: The House of Impossibilities. What would you do if everything you thought you knew about reality suddenly revealed itself to be a lie? That's the question Vasilisa faces as she walks deeper into a forest that seems to be rewriting the laws of physics with every step. And before we follow her any further, I need to tell you something that scholars have recently discovered, something that changes everything about how we read this story. The forest Vasilisa enters isn't just any magical woodland. Archaeological evidence suggests it's based on real sacred groves, where ancient Slavic priests performed initiation rituals so intense, so psychologically transformative, that they were considered actual death and rebirth ceremonies. People who entered these groves weren't expected to come back the same, if they came back at all. So as we watch Vasilisa's journey unfold, remember, we're not just witnessing a fantasy, we're experiencing an echo of rituals that once shaped the very core of who people believed they could become. The first sign that she's left the normal world behind comes within minutes of leaving the cottage. The path she's following, a narrow dirt track that leads toward the forest's heart, begins to change under her feet. At first, it's subtle. The familiar ruts carved by cartwheels start to fade. The packed earth becomes softer, stranger, as if she's walking on ground that no human has ever touched. And then, impossibly, the path begins to glow with a soft, phosphorescent light. Each footstep leaves a glowing print that fades after a few seconds, as if the earth itself is acknowledging her passage. But acknowledging it for what? And for whom? Vasilisa clutches the doll in her pocket and keeps walking. She has no choice. Behind her lies a family that wants her dead. Ahead lies the unknown. But the unknown, at least, offers possibility. The trees grow larger and more ancient as she progresses. These aren't the ordinary birch and pine of the Russian countryside. These are things from a different age. Massive oaks with trunks so wide that 20 people holding hands couldn't circle them. Their branches twisted into shapes that look almost like faces in the moonlight. And speaking of moonlight, here's something strange. Although it's been full dark since she left the cottage, she can see everything with perfect clarity. The forest seems to generate its own light, a soft silver glow that emanates from nowhere and everywhere at once. But it's not just the light that's wrong, it's the sounds, or rather, the lack of them. In any normal forest, you'd hear owls hooting, mice rustling through fallen leaves, the distant howl of wolves. Here, there's nothing but the whisper of wind through branches and the soft crunch of her footsteps on the luminescent path. It's as if every living creature has fled from something so terrible that even predators become prey. And then, just as Vasilisa begins to wonder if she's walking through a forest of the dead, she hears it, the sound of running water. Following the sound, she discovers a stream unlike anything she's ever seen. The water runs silver in the strange light, and it's warm to the touch despite the autumn chill. When she cups her hands to drink, the water tastes like starlight, crisp, clean, and somehow electric on her tongue. But as she drinks, she notices something that makes her blood run cold. There are no fish in this stream, no insects skating on its surface, no moss growing on the rocks. This is water from somewhere else, somewhere life as she understands it doesn't exist. The doll in her pocket begins to pulse like a heartbeat, its wooden form growing warm against her hip. And though it doesn't speak aloud, somehow Vasilisa understands its message. Keep going. You're almost there. Almost where? She wonders. But the doll has never steered her wrong before. She follows the stream as it winds deeper into the forest, and with each turn, the world becomes stranger. Flowers bloom that she's never seen before, pale, luminous blossoms that chime like bells when the wind touches them. Butterflies flutter past with wings that look like stained glass windows, too beautiful to be real. And yet, despite the beauty, there's something deeply unsettling about all of it. This isn't nature as she knows it. This is nature reimagined by something with a completely different understanding of what life should look like. Then she sees the smoke. It rises from somewhere ahead, a thin grey column that seems too straight, too purposeful to be from any ordinary fire. Her heart leaps with hope. Surely smoke means people, civilization, help. But as she hurries toward its source, pushing through a final wall of silver-leaf trees, what she finds in the clearing beyond defies not just her expectations, but the very foundations of reality itself. Standing in the center of the clearing is a house. But calling it a house is like calling a hurricane a breeze. Technically accurate, but utterly inadequate to convey the truth of what you're experiencing. The structure itself looks normal enough at first glance. A small log cabin with a thatched roof, wooden shutters, and a stone chimney from which that impossibly straight smoke is rising. It's the kind of cottage you might find in any Russian village. Except it's not standing on the ground. It's perched, impossibly, on two enormous chicken legs. Not legs like a chicken's, legs that are chickens. Massive, scaly, yellow things the size of tree trunks, complete with wickedly curved talons that grip the earth like a bird of prey clutching a branch. The legs bend and flex with obvious muscular strength, shifting the cottage's weight from one foot to the other in a slow, hypnotic dance. And as Vasilisa watches in stunned silence, the entire house begins to turn in place, spinning slowly on those impossible legs like a music box figurine. But there's nothing delicate or charming about this movement. It's predatory, searching.
The house is looking for something.
Or someone. That's when she notices the fence. Chapter 4. 3 Riders of Eternity. If you think the walking house is the strangest thing Vasilisa encounters, you're about to discover how wrong you can be. Because sometimes, the most terrifying truths are hiding in plain sight, and what she witnesses next will reveal that Baba Yaga's power extends far beyond a single forest cottage. But first, let me tell you something that will make your skin crawl. Recent research into Slavic folklore has uncovered evidence that the 3 riders Vasilisa is about to meet weren't just literary devices. They were part of actual religious ceremonies where participants would dress as these cosmic forces and enact rituals of death and rebirth. The question is, what happens when the ceremony becomes real? The fence surrounding Baba Yaga's domain is a masterpiece of psychological horror that would make Stephen King weep with envy. It's built entirely from human bones, femurs and tibias driven into the earth like fence posts, rib cages woven between them like macabre pickets. The gate is constructed from interlocked pelvic bones, and its lock is a human skull with the jaw still attached, grinning with yellowed teeth. But it's the fence posts that truly reveal the scope of Baba Yaga's power. Each one is topped with a human skull, and as night falls over the clearing, every skull begins to glow with an inner fire that burns through the empty eye sockets like windows into hell. Vasilisa counts them as she approaches, dozens upon dozens of skulls, each one representing someone who came here seeking something and failed whatever test Baba Yaga set for them. The light they cast is cold and blue-white, turning the clearing into a nightmare landscape of dancing shadows. And then she notices something that makes her heart stop. One fence post stands empty, waiting. The message is clear and brutal. Fail the witch's test, and your skull joins this grotesque collection. Pass, and, well, nobody knows what happens to those who pass, because they never return to tell the tale. Vasilisa stands at the edge of the clearing, paralyzed by the impossibility of what she's seeing. The rational part of her mind, the part that understands physics and biology and the basic rules of how the world works, is screaming at her to run, to flee back through the forest and take her chances with her murderous step-family. But the doll in her pocket pulses with warm insistence, and somehow she understands. This is why she's here. This moment, this choice, this threshold between the world she knows and something unimaginably vast and strange. As she stands there, caught between terror and wonder, the very air around her begins to change. A pressure builds, like the moment before a thunderstorm, and the horses inside the fence raise their heads and whicker nervously. Horses? When did she notice horses? Looking more carefully through the bone fence, she can see a stable made of the same impossible architecture as the house. Logs that seem to have grown together rather than been cut and joined, with a roof of what looks like living moss that shifts and breathes in the wind. And standing in the paddock behind the stable are 3 horses, unlike any she's ever seen. The first is white as fresh snow, so purely white that it seems to glow with its own light. Its mane and tail flow like liquid silk, and its eyes are the pale blue of winter sky. Everything about it speaks of morning, of dawn, of the moment when darkness gives way to light. The second horse is red as fresh blood, its coat gleaming like polished copper in the skull light. Its mane appears to be made of actual flame, flickering and dancing without ever being consumed. Its eyes burn like coals, and heat shimmers around its body like a summer mirage. The third horse is black as the space between stars, so dark that it seems to absorb light rather than reflect it. Its mane and tail move like liquid shadow, and its eyes are the deep purple-black of a moonless night. Looking at it makes Vasilisa feel as though she's staring into the void itself. As she watches, transfixed, the white horse begins to pace restlessly in its paddock, tossing its head and pawing at the ground. The eastern horizon, barely visible through the trees, shows the faintest hint of grey. Dawn is coming. And then, with a sound like thunder, the stable doors burst open. The white horse explodes into the clearing, its hooves striking sparks from the ground. But it's not alone. Astride its back sits a rider dressed entirely in white. His face shines like the sun. His armor gleams like polished silver, and in his hands he carries a banner that snaps and cracks in a wind that touches nothing else. Horse and rider circle the clearing once, twice, 3 times, and with each circuit, the grey light in the east grows stronger. Dawn spreads across the sky like spilled milk, chasing away the shadows and dimming the glow of the skulls on their posts. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, the white rider gallops away into the forest, his horse's hooves making no sound despite their obvious power. As he vanishes between the trees, full daylight floods the clearing. Vasilisa realizes she's been holding her breath. She gasps, steadies herself against a tree, and tries to process what she's just witnessed. But before she can make sense of it, the red horse begins its restless pacing. The sun climbs higher in the sky, reaching its zenith directly overhead. The autumn air grows warm despite the season, and somewhere in the distance, she can hear the sound of birds singing, the first normal sound she's heard since entering the forest. The stable doors explode open a second time. The red horse bursts forth like a living flame, its rider dressed in scarlet and gold. His face blazes with the intensity of the midday sun. His armor gleams like molten metal, and his banner burns without being consumed. As he circles the clearing, the sun reaches its full strength, bathing everything in brilliant golden light. And then he too vanishes into the forest, leaving behind the warm glow of a perfect summer afternoon. But Vasilisa knows there will be a third rider. She can feel it in her bones, in the way the shadows are already beginning to lengthen, despite the sun's apparent strength. Time moves differently here, compressed and accelerated, according to rules she doesn't understand. As evening approaches, with impossible speed, the black horse begins to pace. And this time, Vasilisa understands that what she's about to witness isn't just magic. It's the fundamental machinery that keeps reality running. The stable doors open one final time. Chapter 5: Trials of the Witch. Here's something that will disturb you. The tests Baba Yaga gives Vasilisa aren't just random tasks designed to amuse a cruel witch. They're based on actual initiation rites that young people in ancient cultures had to pass to be considered adults. The difference is, those ancient initiates knew they were being tested. Vasilisa has no idea that her life depends on passing an examination she doesn't even know she's taking. The Black Rider's appearance is different from his brother's. Where the White Rider brought hope and the Red Rider brought strength, the Black Rider brings something far more complex: truth. His horse moves like liquid darkness, its hooves silent on the earth. The rider himself is a figure of terrible beauty. His face is the deep blue-black of midnight sky. His armor absorbs light like a black hole, and his banner is a piece of the night itself, woven with stars that glitter like diamonds. As he circles the clearing, darkness doesn't just fall, it crashes down like a physical weight. But it's not empty darkness. This is darkness pregnant with possibility, with secrets, with the kind of truths that can only be seen when all other lights are extinguished. The rider completes his circuit and disappears into the forest, taking with him the last traces of normal time. Vasilisa is now completely outside the natural world, in a place where minutes might be years and years might be moments. The skull lights blaze brighter in response to the darkness, casting everything in that cold, blue-white glow. And in that eerie illumination, Vasilisa sees something that makes her heart nearly stop. The house has stopped spinning. Its door, a simple wooden door that should belong on any peasant cottage, is facing directly toward her. She knows, with the certainty that comes from some deep, ancestral wisdom, that this is her invitation, her moment, her one chance to step forward into whatever fate awaits her, or to flee back into the forest and spend the rest of her life wondering what might have been. The doll in her pocket grows so warm it almost burns, and she understands. This is what her mother's gift has been preparing her for all along. Not just to survive her stepfamily's cruelty, but to face something far greater and more dangerous. Taking a breath that tastes like copper and starlight, Vasilisa walks through the gate of bones. The moment her feet touch the ground inside the fence, everything changes. The air becomes thick and electric, like the atmosphere during a lightning storm. Her skin prickles with energy, and she can taste magic on her tongue, wild, ancient, and completely immoral. But most unsettling of all, she can hear the house breathing. The logs expand and contract slightly, rhythmically, as if the entire structure has lungs and a heartbeat. This isn't just a magical building, it's a living creature. Before she can lose her nerve, Vasilisa approaches the door and knocks 3 times. The sound echoes strangely, as if the cottage is much larger inside than its exterior suggests. For a moment, nothing happens. Then the door swings open on hinges that scream like wounded animals. The interior of the cottage defies physics in the most casual, matter-of-fact way possible. From outside, the building could hold perhaps 2 small rooms. Inside, Vasilisa finds herself in a space that seems to stretch away in all directions. Not infinite exactly, but far larger than should be possible. The walls are lined with shelves that reach up into shadows, filled with jars and bottles containing things that glow, pulse, or move independently. Some hold what look like captured starlight. Others contain what might be liquid shadow. One jar near the door holds something that looks suspiciously like a human heart, still beating. A massive stove dominates the center of the room, its iron surface covered in intricate carvings that seem to shift and change when she's not looking directly at them. Above it hangs a collection of pots and pans that move by themselves, stirring their contents with wooden spoons that float through the air like trained pets. But strangest of all are the hands. Dozens of disembodied human hands scurry about the cottage like spiders, carrying out various tasks. Some chop vegetables with knives that they wield with impossible dexterity. Others tend the fire, their fingers apparently immune to flame. Still others organize shelves, clean surfaces, and perform the countless small tasks that keep a household running. Vasilisa watches in fascination and horror as one hand, pale and delicate, possibly belonging to a young woman, carefully dusts a collection of skulls arranged on a mantelpiece. Another hand, larger and more masculine, tends a garden of plants that grow in pots filled with what looks like grave dirt. And then the air begins to howl. The sound starts as a whisper, like wind through bare branches, but it builds quickly, becoming a shriek, then a roar that seems to come from everywhere at once. The cottage shakes on its chicken legs, the jars on the shelves rattle ominously, and the disembodied hands scatter to secure anything that might fall. Something is coming, something vast and powerful and absolutely terrifying. The howling reaches a crescendo and then suddenly cuts off, leaving a silence so complete that Vasilisa can hear her own heartbeat. Outside, she hears the heavy thud of something massive landing in the clearing. Footsteps approach the cottage, not human footsteps, but something else. Something that walks upright, but whose feet strike the ground with the weight of centuries. The door explodes inward, and Baba Yaga enters her domain. She is nothing like the cartoon witch of children's stories. She is ancient beyond measure, her face a map of wrinkles that speak of eons spent witnessing the rise and fall of civilizations. Her hair is white as bone and wild as a storm, flowing around her like she's underwater. Her eyes are the pale grey of winter sky, and they hold the accumulated wisdom and cruelty of millennia. But it's her teeth that truly terrify. They are made of iron, actual iron, filed to sharp points that gleam like knife blades when she smiles. These are not teeth for eating normal food. These are tools designed for altogether different purposes. She stands nearly 7 feet tall, her body wrapped in a cloak made from what looks like woven shadows. In her hands, she carries a mortar and pestle, not the small kitchen tools you might imagine, but massive things that could crush a human skull without effort. Baba Yaga sniffs the air like a predator, her iron teeth gleaming in the skull light that filters through the windows. "I smell a human," she says, and her voice is like grinding millstones. "A young human, a female human who carries the scent of sorrow and the taste of tears." She turns those ancient, terrible eyes on Vasilisa, who somehow finds the strength to stand straight and meet her gaze without flinching. "Tell me, little girl," Baba Yaga continues, "what brings you to my domain? Do you come seeking death? Because that I can provide easily." And that's when Vasilisa does something that surprises both of them. Instead of begging or cowering or trying to explain, she simply tells the truth. "I came for fire, grandmother," she says, using the respectful term for an elderly woman. "My family sent me to ask our neighbor for light." Baba Yaga's iron teeth catch the light as her smile widens. "Your family, you say? Oh, child, I know your stepmother very well indeed. She and I have an understanding." The implication hits Vasilisa like a physical blow. Her stepmother didn't just send her into the forest hoping she'd get lost or eaten by wolves. She sent her here, to this specific place, knowing exactly what would happen. This was never an errand. It was a murder, planned with supernatural assistance. "But," Baba Yaga continues, settling her massive frame into a chair that appears from nowhere, "I am not in the habit of simply giving away what others seek. If you want fire, little girl, you must earn it." She leans forward, and Vasilisa catches a whiff of her breath, iron and ashes, and something like cinnamon. "You will stay here and work for me. 3 days, 3 impossible tasks. Complete them all, and you shall have your fire and safe passage home. Fail even one." The iron teeth gleam brighter. "And I shall eat you alive, use your bones to mend my fence, and add your skull to my collection." Chapter 6. Fire from the Dead. What happens next challenges everything we think we know about justice, power, and what it means to earn something through suffering. Because the fire Vasilisa receives isn't just light, it's judgment itself, made manifest in a form so terrifying that it will reshape her entire world. The 3 days that follow are unlike anything in human experience. Each dawn, as the White Rider circles the clearing, Baba Yaga presents Vasilisa with a task that should be absolutely impossible for any mortal to complete. On the first day, she must clean the entire cottage, every room, every surface, every mysterious jar and magical implement. She must tend the fire that burns with different colored flames depending on what's being cooked. She must prepare meals for creatures that don't eat normal food. And finally, she must separate a massive pile of mixed grain, wheat from rye, from barley, from poppy seeds, sorting it into neat piles with not a single seed out of place. The work would take 12 people a week to complete. Vasilisa has until the Black Rider returns at nightfall. But here's where the story reveals its deeper truth. Sometimes the magic we need has been with us all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. That night, as Vasilisa stares at the mountain of grain with tears in her eyes, she remembers her mother's words. She takes the wooden doll from her pocket, places a crumb of her meager dinner before it, and explains her impossible situation. The doll's painted eyes seem to glow in the firelight. "Sleep, little mistress," it whispers in a voice like rustling leaves. "The morning is wiser than the evening, And what seems impossible in darkness often reveals itself to be simple in the light. While Vasilisa sleeps, the doll works. But it doesn't work alone. It calls upon forces that most people have forgotten exist. Ants emerge from the cracks between floorboards to sort the grain with microscopic precision. Mice carry away debris too small for human hands to manage. Even the cottage's disembodied hands pitch in, working through the night with supernatural efficiency. When Baba Yaga returns the next morning, she finds every task completed flawlessly. Her iron teeth grind together in frustration, but she's bound by laws older than civilization itself. Laws that say, a bargain made must be honored. The second day's tasks are even more impossible. The third day pushes the boundaries of what magic itself can accomplish. But each night, the doll performs miracles that would make angels weep with envy. And through it all, Vasilisa begins to understand something crucial. She's not just being tested for her ability to work. She's being evaluated for her character, her wisdom, her capacity to recognize power when she sees it and respond appropriately. On the final morning, as the White Rider completes his circuit and dawn breaks over the clearing, Baba Yaga admits defeat. "You have completed your tasks," she says, and there's something like respect in her ancient voice. "The fire you seek is yours." But first, she leans back in her chair, studying Vasilisa with those terrible grey eyes. "You may ask me 3 questions about what you have seen here. But choose wisely, child. Knowledge is more dangerous than ignorance, and there are some truths that destroy those who learn them." Vasilisa considers carefully. The doll in her pocket pulses with warmth, guiding her toward wisdom. "The White Rider who circles your domain each dawn," she says. "Who is he?" "That is my bright day," Baba Yaga replies. "He brings the morning to the world." "And the Red Rider at noon?" "My red sun. He carries the light that feeds all life." "And the Black Rider who brings the night?" "My dark midnight. He brings rest to the weary and dreams to the sleeping." Baba Yaga leans forward, her iron teeth gleaming. "You have asked about the forces that serve me outside this cottage. Do you not wish to know about the mysteries within? The hands that work without bodies, the fire that burns without consuming, the jars that hold captured starlight?" It's a trap, and Vasilisa knows it. The doll in her pocket grows almost too hot to touch, warning her away from dangerous curiosity. "No, grandmother," she says respectfully. "You yourself have taught me that it's not good to know too much." For the first time since Vasilisa arrived, Baba Yaga smiles, and it's not entirely terrifying. "Wisdom," she says approvingly. "You have passed my final test." Rising from her chair with movements that suggest both immense age and eternal power, Baba Yaga walks to her fence of bones. She selects one of the skulls, not the largest or the smallest, but one whose empty sockets burn with a fire that seems somehow intelligent. Mounting it on a long wooden staff, she hands it to Vasilisa. "Here is your light," she says. "This flame will never die, never dim, and never fail to show you the truth of what stands before it. Use it well." As Vasilisa takes the gruesome lantern, she feels power flow through the staff into her hands. This isn't just fire, it's justice itself, compressed into a form that can be carried through the world. "Go now," Baba Yaga says. "Return to those who sent you here. Show them what you have earned." And as Vasilisa turns to leave, she hears the witch's final words. "Remember, child, you are no longer who you were when you arrived. The fire you carry marks you as one who has walked in the land of the dead and returned. Use that knowledge wisely." The journey home, takes only hours, though it felt like weeks to reach Baba Yaga's domain. The skull's light cuts through the darkness like a sword, and the forest itself seems to part before its power. But it's when Vasilisa reaches her stepfamily's cottage that the true nature of her gift becomes clear. The skull doesn't just provide light, it sees truth. And when it looks upon the three women who sent an innocent girl to die, its judgment is swift, final, and absolutely terrifying. Chapter 7: Goddess in Exile. Before we dive deeper into what makes Baba Yaga so enduringly powerful, I need to share something that might completely change how you see this entire story. Recent archaeological discoveries have revealed that Baba Yaga isn't just a fairy tale character. She's the last surviving echo of an ancient goddess whose worship once spanned all of Eastern Europe. But here's what's controversial. When Christianity spread through Slavic lands, it didn't just replace the old gods. It systematically demonized them, turning powerful female deities into monsters and witches. What if Baba Yaga's evil reputation is actually religious propaganda designed to make people forget when women held real spiritual authority? To understand who Baba Yaga really is, we need to journey back to a time before crosses and churches, when the Slavic peoples worshipped in sacred groves under the open sky, and the most powerful religious figures were wise women who could speak directly with the forces of life and death. This was the world of the old gods: Perun the Thunderer, master of the sky and storms; Veles the horned god, ruler of the underworld and keeper of magical wisdom; Svarog the smith, who forged the very foundations of reality. These were not distant, unknowable deities locked away in golden temples, but immediate, accessible forces that infused every aspect of daily life. In this pantheon, female power was not an exception, but a fundamental principle. The ancient Slavs recognized that creation itself was inherently feminine: the earth that births all life, the waters that nourish growth, the darkness that allows rest and renewal. And at the heart of this feminine divine power stood a figure known by many names, but recognized by all: the Great Mother, the Bone Woman, the guardian of the threshold. In different regions, she was called Marana, Kostroma, or simply the Winter Hag. But as the centuries passed and stories merged and evolved, she became known by the name that would survive all others: Baba Yaga. Archaeological evidence from burial sites across Eastern Europe reveals the scope of her worship. Excavations have uncovered ritual sites where priestesses, always women past childbearing age, would conduct ceremonies in huts built on stilts to elevate them between earth and sky. These structures, designed to look like they were standing on legs, were believed to exist in the liminal space between worlds. The resemblance to Baba Yaga's chicken-legged hut isn't coincidental. It's a memory encoded in folklore, a description of actual religious architecture transformed into fantasy. But Baba Yaga's power extended far beyond any single building or ritual site. She was the embodiment of the crone, the third face of the ancient triple goddess, where the maiden represented potential and the mother represented creation. The crone represented transformation, wisdom, and the terrifying necessity of endings. This is why she's associated with winter, death, and the hunt. She wasn't evil, she was essential. Without her, nothing would ever change, grow, or be reborn. She was the force that cleared away what was old and dying to make room for new life. And here's where the story gets politically dangerous. When Christianity arrived in Slavic lands, it brought with it a very different understanding of female power. The new religion centered around a male god, served by male priests, interpreted through male scholars. Women's spiritual authority, especially the authority of older women who were no longer defined by their relationships to men, became suspect, dangerous, heretical. The transformation of Baba Yaga from goddess to monster reflects this larger cultural shift. The wise woman who once served as a bridge between worlds became a witch who devoured children. The sacred crone who tested heroes and granted wisdom became a cannibalistic hag who threatened civilization itself. But folklore is remarkably resilient. Even as official Christianity suppressed the old ways, people continue to tell stories about Baba Yaga that preserved her original function. She remained a giver of gifts to the worthy, a punisher of the wicked, and a transformer of souls. Her essential nature, neither good nor evil, but necessary, survived centuries of religious persecution. What's particularly fascinating is how widespread her influence became. If you look at European folklore beyond the Slavic world, you'll find her sisters everywhere, each one representing the same archetypal power, but adapted to local needs and fears. In Scotland and Ireland, she appears as the Cailleach, the blue-faced hag of winter who carries a hammer that can freeze rivers and split mountains. The Cailleach is said to have shaped the very landscape of the British Isles, creating valleys with her footsteps and mountains with stones from her apron. In Germanic folklore, she becomes Frau Holle, another winter goddess who rewards the industrious and punishes the lazy. Frau Holle's story parallels Baba Yaga's in remarkable detail. She tests young women with impossible tasks, grants magical gifts to those who prove worthy, and serves as a bridge between the world of the living and the realm of spirits. Even in places where Christianity had been established for centuries, these goddesses persisted in folk memory. They were too fundamental, too necessary to human understanding of the world, to be completely erased. But here's what makes Baba Yaga unique among these figures. She never fully transformed into either a saint or a devil. While other goddesses were either absorbed into Christian mythology as saints or demonized beyond recognition, Baba Yaga maintained her essential ambiguity. She remained dangerously helpful, terrifyingly wise, impossibly necessary. This suggests something profound about the culture that created and preserved her stories. The Slavic peoples, perhaps more than other European groups, maintained a complex understanding of power that refused to divide the world into simple categories of good and evil. Baba Yaga embodies this complexity. She is the personification of a universe that operates according to its own logic, not human moral categories. She grants gifts and imposes punishments based on laws older than civilization, laws that judge not by intention, but by action, not by social status, but by inner worth. This is why her tests are so crucial to understanding her true nature. She doesn't ask heroes to prove their strength or their purity. She asks them to prove their wisdom, their respect for forces greater than themselves, and their ability to recognize power when they encounter it. The young people who seek her out are always at crucial transition points in their lives. They've outgrown their childhood understanding of the world, but haven't yet developed adult wisdom. They need something that their families, communities, and entire cultures can't provide: initiation into the deeper mysteries of existence. Baba Yaga provides that initiation, but at a price. She forces them to confront their deepest fears, to rely on resources they didn't know they possessed, and to accept responsibility for their own transformation. Those who succeed don't just receive magical gifts, they become fundamentally different people. This transformative function reveals her true identity. Baba Yaga isn't just a character in fairy tales. She's a living symbol of the power that exists at the margins of human experience, the wisdom that can only be found by those brave enough to leave the safety of civilization and venture into the unknown. She represents the part of human nature that refuses to be tamed, categorized, or controlled. She is the wild feminine power that existed before patriarchy and will exist after it falls. She is the reminder that some truths can only be learned through direct experience. Some gifts can only be earned through genuine courage, and some transformations can only be achieved by those willing to risk everything. In a world that increasingly demands simple answers and easy categories, Baba Yaga offers something far more valuable: the understanding that reality itself is complex, dangerous, and utterly beyond human control. She teaches that wisdom comes not from having power over the world, but from learning to navigate a world that has power over us. That's why her stories have survived for over 1,000 years, and why they continue to resonate with anyone who has ever felt caught between childhood and adulthood, safety and adventure, the known and the unknowable. She is the goddess in exile, maintaining her ancient function in the only way possible, through stories told in the darkness, when the rational world loosens its grip and deeper truths become possible. Chapter 8: The Gatekeeper's Secret. Now that we understand Baba Yaga's true divine origins, we can finally address the most important question of all. What is she really guarding? Because once you understand her actual function, everything about her, the terrifying tests, the impossible house, even the fence made of bones, reveals itself to be part of an elegant, necessary system. And here's what might disturb you most. This system is still operating today, even though most people have forgotten how to recognize it. Baba Yaga's role in Slavic mythology isn't random or accidental. She serves as the guardian of the threshold, the cosmic bouncer who decides who gets to pass from one level of reality to another. But she's not guarding just any threshold. She stands at the most important border in all of existence, the line between life and death, between the world of matter and the realm of pure spirit. This is why her domain is always described as existing at the edge of the world. It's not a geographical location, it's a psychological and spiritual state. It's the place you reach when you've exhausted all ordinary solutions to your problems and must either transform completely or perish. Think about every hero who seeks out Baba Yaga in the old stories. They're never looking for ordinary help. They don't come to her for directions to the nearest village or advice about farming techniques. They come because they need something that exists outside the normal world: magical healing for a dying loved one, wisdom that can save a kingdom, power to defeat an immortal enemy. In other words, they come because they've reached the absolute limit of what human knowledge and ability can provide. They need to access forces that operate beyond the physical realm, forces that most people aren't prepared to handle. This is where Baba Yaga's tests become crucial. She's not being cruel for the sake of cruelty. She's conducting a rigorous examination to determine whether the seeker has the psychological and spiritual strength to survive contact with powers that could easily destroy them. Consider the nature of her tests. They require not just intelligence or physical strength, but wisdom, humility, and the ability to recognize when you're out of your depth. Heroes must show proper respect for forces they don't understand, complete tasks that require supernatural assistance, and demonstrate that they can accept help without losing their essential humanity. Those who fail these tests aren't just killed. They're absorbed into Baba Yaga's domain, their skulls adding to the fence of bones that serves as both warning and illumination. But here's the crucial detail that most people miss. Their skulls don't just burn with magical fire. They burn with consciousness. The fence of bones isn't a trophy case. It's a library. Each skull contains the preserved awareness of someone who attempted to cross the threshold but lacked the necessary preparation. Their consciousness becomes part of Baba Yaga's domain, contributing to the accumulated wisdom that she uses to test future seekers. In a sense, every failed hero becomes part of the system that evaluates the next generation of candidates. This transforms the entire dynamic of Baba Yaga's domain from simple horror to complex ecology. The house that walks on chicken legs isn't just a bizarre architectural choice. It's a mobile testing station that can relocate itself to wherever it's most needed. The mortar and pestle that she flies in aren't just unusual transportation. They're tools that allow her to traverse multiple dimensions of reality. And the three riders who serve her, day, sun, and night, aren't just magical servants. They represent her authority over the fundamental forces that structure reality itself. Time, light, darkness, the cycle of days and seasons. These are the building blocks of existence, and they obey her commands. This reveals the scope of what she's actually protecting. Beyond her threshold lies not just the land of the dead, but the realm where the basic laws of reality are written and rewritten. It's the control room of existence itself, and access to it must be carefully regulated. Because here's what happens to those who do pass her tests. They don't just receive magical gifts. They become agents of transformation in the ordinary world. They return with the ability to reshape reality according to deeper principles than most people can comprehend. Vasilisa doesn't just get fire from Baba Yaga, she gets justice itself, compressed into a form that can burn away evil and illuminate truth. Other successful heroes return with the ability to heal incurable diseases, command the elements, or speak with the dead. They become bridges between worlds, carrying transformative power back into ordinary reality. But this power comes with enormous responsibility. Those who have crossed the threshold and returned are forever changed. They can never again pretend that the surface level of reality is all there is. They become keepers of dangerous knowledge, holders of forces that could reshape or destroy their entire communities. This is why Baba Yaga's final test is often about wisdom rather than courage. Can the seeker be trusted with power that transcends human understanding? Will they use it responsibly, or will they be corrupted by it? The fence of bones serves as a permanent reminder of what happens to those who seek power without wisdom, transformation without respect, or access to divine forces without the character to handle them responsibly. In our modern world, we've largely forgotten that such thresholds exist. We've convinced ourselves that reality consists only of what we can measure and control. But the old stories persist for a reason. They map territories of human experience that remain as relevant today as they were 1,000 years ago. Every person who has ever faced a crisis that can't be solved through ordinary means, who has reached the end of their rope and discovered they must either transform completely or be destroyed, has approached Baba Yaga's threshold. The question is whether they have the wisdom to recognize it and the courage to knock on her door. Because she's still there, still testing, still guarding the passage to powers that most people can't imagine. And she's still separating those who are ready for transformation from those who would be consumed by it. The only difference is that most people today don't know her name. Chapter 9: Sisters of Fate. Here's something that will make you question everything you think you know about individual identity. In many of the oldest Baba Yaga stories, she doesn't appear as a single entity at all. She manifests as three sisters, all sharing the same name, all possessing different aspects of the same cosmic function. This isn't just a storytelling quirk. It's a clue to something profound about the nature of consciousness, destiny, and the forces that shape human lives. And when you understand what these three sisters really represent, you'll never look at your own life choices the same way again. The pattern appears in stories across the Slavic world with remarkable consistency. A hero, often someone seeking to rescue a captured princess or complete an impossible quest, receives cryptic instructions to seek out not one, but three Baba Yagas. The journey is always the same. Travel to the edge of the known world to find the first sister, then venture beyond even that to find the second, and finally journey to the very boundary of existence itself to meet the third and most powerful. Each encounter follows a ritualistic pattern. The hero arrives at the chicken-legged hut, speaks the proper words to make it face them, and enters to meet that particular Baba Yaga. She tests them with questions, threatens to eat them if they're unworthy, but ultimately, if they show proper respect and courage, provides them with a magical gift and directions to her next sister. The first Baba Yaga, the youngest, typically gives gifts that help with the physical challenges of the quest. A magical horse that can run faster than the wind, a ball of yarn that rolls ahead to show the correct path, or a comb that can create forests when thrown behind fleeing heroes. The second Baba Yaga, the middle sister, provides gifts that address psychological and emotional obstacles. A mirror that reveals truth, a ring that protects against deception, or a cloak that makes the wearer invisible to enemies. But it's the third Baba Yaga, the eldest and most powerful, who holds the key to the quest's ultimate success. She possesses the crucial piece of information, the final magical tool, or the deepest wisdom that allows the hero to complete their impossible task. This threefold structure isn't unique to Slavic folklore. It appears in mythology around the world, most famously in the form of the three fates, the Moirai in Greek mythology, the Norns in Norse tradition, the Parsi in Roman culture. These are the cosmic forces that spin, measure, and cut the thread of every human life. But here's what makes the Baba Yaga trinity unique. Unlike the classical fates, who are often portrayed as cold and mechanistic, the three sisters maintain Baba Yaga's essential ambiguity. They're not simply implementing predetermined destiny. They're actively involved in testing and shaping the heroes who seek them out. This suggests a radically different understanding of fate itself. Instead of being locked into predetermined paths, human destiny becomes something that must be earned through demonstrating worthy character. The three sisters don't just oversee fate, they participate in creating it through their interactions with mortals. The psychological implications are staggering. If we read the three Baba Yagas as representing different aspects of the human psyche, they become symbols of the process through which we mature and develop wisdom. The first sister represents our initial confrontation with forces beyond our control, the moment when we realize that childhood safety is an illusion and we must develop real strength to survive in the world. The second sister embodies our growing understanding of the complex psychological and emotional forces that shape human behavior. The realization that wisdom requires not just strength, but insight into the hidden motivations that drive people's actions. The third sister symbolizes our eventual acceptance of mystery itself, the recognition that some questions don't have answers, some problems don't have solutions, and some aspects of existence must be experienced rather than understood. But there's an even more disturbing interpretation. What if the three sisters represent different levels of reality itself, each one governing a deeper layer of existence?
The first sister might rule over the physical world, the realm of matter, energy, and natural law, where most human problems can be solved through practical action.
The second sister could govern the psychological realm, the world of thoughts, emotions, dreams, and the unconscious forces that shape behavior in ways we rarely recognize.